Excellent. All right, people are coming in. People are coming in.
Oh.
Everyone's looking good. Happy Thursday. Let me know when we're ready to go, Anna.
Yeah, you're ready now.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Africa Fashion Week London Web Talk Series, Fashion Futures. And today we are talking about empowering creatives. We have an incredible lineup of panelists who are coming from not just from incredible organizations, but also from creative backgrounds themselves, who are also very much invested in their own individual creativity and realizing how much the COVID crisis has affected their creative outputs and motivation. So in addition to all of that, of course, they also have to go back to their jobs, their respective jobs, and be as responsive to what's happening here, the challenging times, and respond to not just what's happening at work, but also the demands that's coming from outside. And so today, what we're here to do today is to see what we can what we can offer in terms of moral support, what we can offer in terms of advice, what we can offer respectively as far as the organizations are concerned and what they're doing in terms of their responsiveness to what's happening out there. So before I go too much far into what I want to say, I really think it's important to introduce every single panelist. And guys, they're very special to me. They were all so readily available to participate in this web talk. I'm telling you, it's been incredible. As soon as I sent them an email, they responded immediately. So thank you all so very much. So let's start with Genevieve Pace. Please, Genevieve, can you be telling us exactly which organization you're with and the scope of your organization and how, what else in terms of the work that you're doing at the organization, please?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Genevieve. I work at the British Council and I work in the creative economy team at the British Council, and I'm based in London. And most of my work is focused in Africa, so supporting and working and collaborating with our colleagues in Africa on our creative economy programs, activities and projects. I'm really excited to be here today to chat with you guys and the other amazing panelists.
Thank you, Genevieve. Jeanette, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeanette Bain-Burnett. I'm Head of Community Engagement at City Hall in London. So I work for the Mayor of London and for the Greater London Authority, and my work is all about giving communities a voice. One of the reasons that I've been asked to be a part of this panel is that my team at City Hall leads on a project called Africa in London, which is about encouraging African creativity and giving it a bigger platform in London. So I'm really excited to talk about this and to discuss it with my fellow panelists. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming, Jeanette. Debo. Debo, your microphone is still muted. There you go.
Hi, I'm Debo. I'm literature programmer at Southbank Centre, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. So that means I work across the literature program, and I program into many of our festivals, and I'm also the co-lead programmer for Africa Utopia Festival, which has been part of Africa in London.
Excellent, excellent. And Rachel.
Hi everybody, so I'm part of this panel because I previously worked for the Mayor's Office and was a mentor for the Africa in London programme. Currently I'm a freelance consultant, so I'm doing some project management work in Waltham Forest, but also delivering, joint delivering some creative projects with London Borough of Culture of Brent, and doing another joint project with Mercury Musicals.
Excellent, excellent. Guys, audience, I'm sure you guys have heard the common thread in all of what the panelists have said, and that is their commitment to what they do in celebrating the culture of and the diverse culture of Africa, and the development, visibility, and opportunities for people of African heritage, but also in terms of developing the entrepreneurship and business development in these communities here in the UK, and as Genevieve's job definitely involves across Africa also. I wanted to ask you guys, to what extent has this crisis affected your job, and in terms of what you had planned during this time, and to what extent it is really changing what is going to happen afterwards? Who would like to start? Actually, Debo, I know there was a lot of plans coming up for Afro-Utopia, and you, as one of the lead programmers for Afro-Utopia, tell us, because I know that's one of the most imminent activities that was coming up. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
So when everything changed, I guess, with the response to COVID-19, the issue, I guess, for Southbank Centre is everything we do pretty much is live and in quite high numbers. Contextually, Southbank Centre is a number of spaces. We have the Royal Festival Hall, which holds around just over 2,800 people. The Queen Elizabeth Hall, which is 900 capacity, and the Purcell Room, which is 300. And a festival would typically take over all of those spaces, plus the public spaces. So for a typical festival over a weekend, we may have anywhere up to around 9,000 to 10,000 people coming through over a day to the festival. And so with the current situation, that's just untenable. And frankly, once we knew we had to close down the site, that has meant a lot of things have had to be either, cancelled or rescheduled. Luckily, in terms of Afro-Utopia, this year, so we've moved to a biennial model. And so this year we were hoping to be part of African Fashion Week and to look beyond the Southbank Centre's footprint and site and actually connect with other festivals and go into the community, because we felt after the success of last year's festival that to continue growing, we needed to find out exactly what Africa means and African arts means to people in the community directly, to make sure that we are moving, that we continue to move in a direction that connects with people and the people that we want to see at the festival. So that means hopefully, with the 2021 festival, we can still go ahead and that we can shift a lot of the work that we would have been doing at other festivals and in the community to either later in the year or the beginning of 2021. But writ large, in terms of the year-round content that we do, whether it's on the continent or with people in the African diaspora in London, everything up until end of June, we basically either had to see if we could reschedule or cancel, which is unfortunate. And I think the hardest part of this is that the uncertainty of the situation means we also can't provide certainty to artists, because we're basically taking the lead from DCMS and the government to find out when a space like ours can be reopened.
Thank you. And we are very much, Africa Fashion Week London is very happy to be part of that, that satellite program that that Debo talked about in terms of Afro-Utopia, and using all platforms to broaden audience reach and to be part of a bigger picture in what Afro-Utopia is trying to achieve. So we hope we're very much still committed to doing that, Debo, very much so.
Thank you.
Jeanette, could you tell us also how that has affected the program that you guys had in place and moving forward?
Yeah, so quite similarly, all the elements of the program that we have been delivering. So for the past year, we've been running the Africa in London program, and we've done that in partnership with all of you, actually, having our anchor events and our mentoring program kind of supported by this partnership and a few other people as well. So essentially anything that was going to be live, we've had to postpone or we've had to repurpose the work. So we're working on some ideas for how we can digitize some of the work. We're also wanting to archive this first year, which was a pilot year, and kind of capture what we've achieved and capture some of the reflections of the artists that have been mentored through the program, and also some reflections on the live work that's happened. So I guess we were planning to do that anyway, but all the stuff that was meant to be live and face-to-face, we've had to think through how we can do that digitally. We have to think now about repurposing funding and decisions that need to be made around that, and that will take a little while. So yeah, it just means that it's slowed us down, which we really don't like, because this is work that we, the reason that we kind of developed this strand of work was to kind of put momentum behind supporting African creativity in London. So that's a bit frustrating. But I mean, yeah, we know that a lot of people are in a similar position. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are. Obviously, a lot of our attention has been diverted to immediate response work to kind of people who are in really acute situations as a result of COVID-19.
Excellent. And we will get to the immediate response in a little bit also, because that leads directly into exactly what this web talk is about, in terms of continuing to offer that more support and inspiring the entire creative industry and all the stakeholders to keep going. But I just wanted to have Genevieve and Rachel talk about, how this COVID-19 crisis has impacted their work also, the programs that were supposed to be happening and moving forward. Genevieve?
Yeah, I think definitely share what Debo and Jeanette have said. I think, a lot has had to be adapted, a lot has had to be postponed. And in our case, working, across borders and across continents, mobility is the main thing. And we've had to look at how we bring all of that online and how we still enable those connections to happen, but all through the medium of digital. So I think it's been challenging and exciting at the same time. Everyone's going digital, so you're also trying to think about how the types of engagements that we have, how they can be different, how they can, be sustainable, because we're looking at long-term connections, between artists or creatives or producers between the UK and Africa. I think what we have been doing really well is a lot of our programs have moved digital. So we've had something, we've got a program in East Africa called Creative DNA, which is fashion focused. So it's focused on the fashion sector in East Africa, more specifically in Kenya. And we have something called Fashion Fridays. So we actually had one today because Friday is a public holiday tomorrow in Kenya, which is great. We've had great engagement with that. So it's kind of a half an hour chat with someone from the industry, and it's around a specific topic. So last week it was Fashion Revolutionary Week, and our topic was around sustainable fashion with Sunny Dolat, a stylist and creative director in Kenya. So it's just finding new ways to engage. There's a lot to look at and to try and figure out. And that's what we're doing at the moment.
Excellent. And Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, much the same as everybody said. I mean, programs that were supposed to have gone ahead, some of them particularly where they've involved large numbers or large audiences, those have had to be rescheduled. So there's a number of different aspects. So if I look at the Borough of Culture in Brent, for example, the big street party, which I'm a community advisor for in Brent, that has now been postponed and will be happening next year. Mm-hmm. And all the artists who are taking part or delivering projects for that event, obviously a lot of their work, some of it has had to be put on hold. I'm working with one artist called Andrea from AQ Arts, and we're delivering a performing arts project. And obviously we were doing that in person, but now we're having to make the adaptations and do a lot of that work via Zoom conferencing, which obviously has quite an impact on how you deliver. So you've got to be quite adaptable to how you deliver your classes, because I'm doing the vocal workshops alongside with Andrea, and it's been quite challenging trying to work with young people on vocal harmonizing, vocal work, because Zoom doesn't really adapt to that very well, because you get a lot of delay and feedback. So that's obviously one aspect in terms of working on projects in relation to live events. Other than that, I mean, contracts have been cancelled. So I was actually due to take up a contract prior to lockdown. And that for me has actually been cancelled and postponed, but I'm actually doing another contract, so that's okay. It hasn't impacted on me too much, but it's much of what everybody said. We have to adapt. We've got to look at new ways of doing things because nobody knows. The uncertainty is there, and when you don't have certainty, you can't go ahead with certain projects as you would have done before. Much really picking up on what everyone said.
And I especially like that, well, all of you, every single one of you, I mean, the platforms that you guys represent is not just one-dimensional. It really focuses on the creative industry across the board. I know, Rachel, it's great that you mentioned that while one of a few contracts have either been cancelled or have to be rescheduled, you still have been able to find, you know, some work there, which has been incredible, and you're quite busy right now. In fact, all of you find yourself making sure that you keep yourself busy, whether it's to work professionally or just keeping yourself busy and creatively also. And that question, the first question that I posed to you guys was very important because I think it's very important that people understand that all of the organizations are also strained by what has happened. Do you know what I mean? And so while all of that has, you know, the strain has been so impactful on you guys, it is the rest of the general public should not forget that. They should not forget that you guys are also trying to figure out things as you go along. You mentioned two words that I thought was so very important, Jeanette, and that is postpone and repurpose. And that was another reason why we thought it was so important to have this web talk, because at the end of the day, when all of this is settled, we do have to get back to business. And that is a new normal. So to what extent for all of you has, how hard has it been to try to convince the organization, the systems in place, the whole, you know, the importance of finding the importance of postponing and repurposing? How difficult has that been? The challenges that you guys have faced in trying to execute that? Jeanette, can you start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, I don't know, I mean, where do you start with that? It's been, I think the first thing to say is that we're all recovering from a shock, aren't we? Everyone has, no one has been at full capacity. I mean, forget the fact that I've got children to educate at home. That's a whole other issue. But no one is at full capacity, and that's because we are all processing what this means. I think that one of the things that has been helpful to me in terms of thinking through the impact of COVID and how we communicate, how we move forward, is the idea of simplicity. Because essentially what's happened to a lot of us as organizations, as individuals, you know, as families, as a society, is that things are being stripped back. So you're asking yourself some very basic questions about what your core purpose is. And I think that applies to all of us as organizations as well. Because if you can't do what you are doing, if your activities have to change and your means of delivering them has to change, you have to get to a really simple, really easy to kind of translate purpose and core objective. So I think that's one of the ways that we're kind of trying to kind of persuade and, you know, sort of progress, you know, some of the work that we want to do. It's kind of saying, well, even though this situation is really difficult and a lot has changed, our core purpose hasn't changed. And actually some of our core purpose has deepened. So some of the stuff that we've been doing around equality and making sure that everyone's voices are heard. Well, I mean, we're seeing some deepening of inequalities in London now. So under these circumstances, we need to recognize that our core purpose of making sure everyone's voices are heard continues to be driven through. It can't be sidelined because we're in a kind of crisis. It's even more important. So I think that's one thing. And then the other thing that I've been thinking about is actually one of the core values of Africa in London, which is kind of a collective voice. So a lot of organizations have, you know, we have our own objectives. We want to get on with stuff. Individual artists and, you know, arts organizations want to do their thing. But actually for something like African creativity, which often finds itself marginalized, having a collective voice and coming together and connecting in new ways is really important. And even though we can't be together and all our gatherings have stopped, I'm sure everyone is really kind of surprised by the ways in which we can connect online and the new connections that are growing. So I think there's really kind of, there's a lot of hope for the collective voice of the kind of African diaspora in terms of the creative, creative ambitions that we have. So those are just two things that I've been sort of mulling over since this has happened.
Thank you, thank you. And Genevieve, heading your department also, and not just, and a department that really focuses, as you said, on mobility across continents and across continents from UK and Africa, but especially across Africa, which is a massive continent and has its own sort of obstacles in the place also in trying to ensure that mobility is facilitated as smoothly as possible. How have you been able to find the postponing and repurposing of your programs and systems, been able to move forward?
Yeah, just reflecting on what Jeanette said, because for me personally, and for so many, it's been a lot to deal with just to come to terms of the global crisis that we're in. This, not just for our works, not just professionally, but personally as well, like, adapting to a new way of working, being far from family in a time like this, thinking about people that are in, quite anxious situations with regards to their work or their personal environments. So I think, being kind to ourselves and just moving at a kind of softer and slower pace has really helped to kind of focus our attention and looking at bringing us back to our purpose, which is using creativity as a vehicle to connect communities. And we're still able to do that. And now it's obviously all moved digitally. But the value of the kind of in-person connections, is still core to our remit. So we're thinking ahead to that. But at the moment, as we are moving digitally, and we've just had a brilliant, last week, we launched Collab Now, which is a an opportunity for the creation of digital artwork between artists in the UK and in Africa. And there was an online exhibition this week, and that's been really brilliant. So we're still trying to have those opportunities for people to engage with new artworks, for people to learn about the collaborations that we've been fostering. And but yeah, I think it is a difficult time for everyone, and to think about what needs to be postponed and what can be repurposed. But definitely what Jeanette said about thinking about your purpose and just stripping everything back, and being, quite simple, like simplifying everything has been really important as well.
Absolutely. And Genevieve, you mentioned some amazing programs that you guys have running right now. We'd be happy to help in promoting those on the FWO platform, also on our website. So please send that over to us too, and we'll definitely do so.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll definitely do that.
Yes, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Jeanette, about the collective support that this crisis has really triggered. I mean, when it comes to dealing with, as you mentioned, about the celebration and the visibility of African culture in this country, and making sure it has equal importance, there's always been, as far as these organizations are involved, a very evident, prominent collective support in that. And even with the Afro-Utopia satellite programs, Debo, there was very much the approach, correct me if I'm wrong, that was to really reinforce a collective support also. Is that correct?
Yes, it really is. I think partly with a place like Southbank Centre and the fact that we do so many festivals, but particularly Afro-Utopia, it's very easy to be seen as a sort of monolithic statement on an entire continent, and we understand that we can't do that. We can't represent all of Africa in one festival, whether it's on the continent or in the diaspora. and the many different views, opinions, artists, ideas coming out of the continent, but also in terms of what people want and who is it for. And so I think partly we understand with the festival that it has to be one of collaboration, and it has to be, you know, us working with, whether it's the mayor's office or with the British Council, with partners like, you know, African Fashion Week, that we need to understand, okay, what's going on, what are people talking about, what do people want, what are the conversations happening in and around the continent and in the diaspora, and how best is it to present them in the form of art. And so us wanting to take this time to do collaborations and to reach out to various audiences via other people's festivals and platforms was to continue that exercise beyond the festival. Because I think one thing that the global crisis that we're in right now has forced, like Genevieve said, is everyone to slow down. And I think it's really easy in live events that pretty much the day after your festival, you're planning the next one. And there is no stop, there is no sort of respite. Like as soon as it's done, it's on to the next one. And it's hard to take, it can be quite hard to take a beat and to really evaluate what you've done and where you want to go next, which is what this time was for. And I think even though, yes, we can't meet in person right now and, you know, things are quite different, I think it is forcing everyone to take a beat and to basically be prepared for when things can gear up again, in a way, in whatever way it will gear up again, because obviously we don't know what things are going to look like in terms of the year and but we want to be prepared for pretty much any eventuality, hopefully. And so this is the point where we can really take time to both look at collaboration, but, you know, do our research and understand what's happening, so that when we can come back, we can come back strong.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, Jeanette, you mentioned something that was that caught my ears quite keenly, and that is, you've noticed that this crisis actually has increased inequality, and I want to bring that together with the issue of mobility across communities, not just across continent, but we'll focus right now, for now, on what's happening in the UK, and how you guys have been able to address this issue about, you know, the inequality now. Because while there's, as all of you have mentioned and agreed that it's definitely brought people closer together, there's also an issue of inequality that has was perhaps there, but it's certainly more prominent than before now. And so how are you guys able to address this issue? What have your department, Jeanette and Genevieve, and also Rachel, when you come in there, I want to talk about, because I know the work that you do, you get to work in the communities, because now that you've taken on a freelance work, taking on that project managing freelance wise, and you have your own organization, Victorious Art. I want to see how you help to accommodate the you know, having more equality, you know, on the ground. So Jeanette, tell us about that, please. And this, sorry, before you say anything, and this is before we, the audience, before we get into resources that are out there to, you know, for the general public, and the different ways that the different organizations are responding to the demands and panic. So first, let's talk about this inequality and mobility across communities, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a huge question. Shortly before all of this kicked off, I was speaking on a panel about a report that was done by the Mayor's Fund for London about how young people experience London, and the fact that there are huge gaps in terms of progression, opportunity, even where you have a fairly strong educational provision. What we're seeing is that the longer term outcomes for particular groups, so we're thinking about black young people in London who may come from low income families, that we're not really seeing the translation from, you know, sort of offering opportunity to long-term impact on people's lives. And I think that there's a lot of work to be done on this. I think it's a huge question, Michael, but the core of what we are trying to do is to make sure, first of all, that the inequality that we see in people's lived experience isn't reflected in the way that we engage with people. So what I mean by that is, we don't only see inequality in terms of outcomes for people, but we also see inequality in terms of participation. And we actually think that one of the keys to addressing the outcomes issue is having better engagement with a wider range of people, so that people's voices are brought around the table. And that's what a lot of the work that I do is about kind of tackling the inequalities in voice and power that we see between communities. And I guess Africa in London is a kind of microcosm of that. You know, how do we make sure that we open up a space where there's a greater platform for people of African descent, the African diaspora in London, to shape their own future, to be able to kind of, you know, have access to resources, to have access to mentoring and networks, so that they can be a part of something rather than feeling like they're on the margins of something. So I think that's one of the kind of principles that drives our work, and that's one of the ways that we try to do that. In this season, one of the things that we've been doing is a really simple thing. It's that we've redeployed a lot of our staff to gather intelligence and insight through telephoning, through surveys, just for us to understand what impact this is having on people and to get an idea of how they can really be helped. And then we feed that into some of the response work that we're doing. So we've got a fund called the London Community Response Fund, which touches on lots of different areas of work. You know, initially it was about kind of the really acute challenges around kind of food supply and things like that. But we've moved on to kind of community organizations and grassroots organizations going digital, and we have a strand of that's about cultural organizations as well. But we've shaped that through conversations. Actually, we have a team that's having daily conversations with organizations in the community to find out what they're facing, so that we know what they need and we can kind of shape our offer in that way. So I think the question of inequality of voice and power is one of the roots, one of the ways in which we can start to address inequality of outcomes. And I think you're right in saying that we're not talking about new challenges. These are existing challenges that are being deepened by the current situation and highlighted by it. So this is stuff that we've been working on for a long time, and is kind of core to our mission at City Hall. Excellent.
And Genevieve, because I know all of the organizations here work quite closely together also, because when there's that closeness that you guys work also deals with the issue of addressing inequality and mobility across communities. So Genevieve, do you mind giving a little input on that too, please?
Yeah, I think what I was thinking about is that working with partners and reaching out to your partners more than ever before is so important that, you know, in this moment that we find ourselves, and having those strong partnerships in place and being able to reach out, to share information, to share resources, to come together just to discuss what we're doing today. We're having a dialogue, and I think that's really important. And I agree with Jeanette. I think the work that we do, it's always about reaching, you know, everyone within a community. It's not about, you know, in this specific moment, you know, we don't have a specific plan that we're looking at targeting specific communities, but we've just at the beginning of this year we commissioned a piece of research, so some insights gathering, looking at the young creative community in the UK, so 18 to 35-year-olds, and looking at the types of engagement opportunities that they want and how they want to connect with the young creative community in Africa. And, you know, it was really important to us that we did connect with, you know, a diverse range of young creative communities in the UK, and not just, you know, be London centric. And it was really interesting because we worked with someone that's maybe not your traditional researcher from an academic background. We work with a young creative consultant that's from that community that we're trying to reach. And I think what's really exciting now is that reports, you know, we're going to have that report next week, and we can start looking at that while we develop our new projects and activities to ensure that we're being reflective of what the young creative community in the UK really needs and wants, with the types of connection points they want with young creative communities in SSA.
Excellent. I know one of the things that Africa Fashion Week London is doing, you know, and Africa Fashion Week Nigeria, because that's one of our sister organization also that we're doing. We have been working, in addition to working with the wonderful partnerships that you guys, we work very closely with the different council to facilitate a exchange program. So if we can support you also again in doing that, Genevieve, please do let us know, because we also work very closely with the British Council in Nigeria. So we'll be very happy to be on board with that. And I know, Jeanette, we've had wonderful conversations with you and your department and your incredible team, and I'm so happy that you know, that you've been so you know, forthcoming, that the Mayor's Office has been so forthcoming also in engaging with us to have a bottom-up approach to looking at what policies can be in place and what policies can be reshaped that will better engage and resolve this inequality when it comes to all communities and the diversity of the African community also. Rachel, I wanted to pose that question to you also regarding being very much on the ground and working with the different communities, how you've been able to facilitate that too, and because I'm sure people voice their concerns to you directly also regarding the inequality and feeling underrepresented and feel the need to, you know, to be more involved.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for me, my area has been quite specific. So one of the areas that I've looked at, I mean, during this time, like everybody else, just sort of picking up on everything everyone said, you know, is about focusing and looking at where you can actually make change. Because I mean, as Jeanette was saying, you know, communities, it's a very broad term. There's loads of communities, loads of different people. You need to find something that you can focus on. So for me, I've picked an area that I feel that I can actually make a difference in. So I'm at the moment working closely with the board at Mercury Musical to look at how we can address inequality in music theatre. So that's just one area in terms of representation and the fact that we don't see a lot of creatives being exposed or showcased. We're not seeing the work that composers are doing, that writers are doing. It has a particular face. So that's what I'm currently working on. So I think it is about being focused in terms of where can you make a difference, and in some ways as well, encouraging people to think about what they can do for themselves, because there's only so much these organizations can do for everybody. You know, we can all look at the mayor, we can look at everybody else, but the reality is it's you in your house on your own. There's certain things you're going to have to work out by yourself and certain things you can do with people, but definitely encouraging collaboration is important. So that's something I'm working on currently. We're going to launch something. It has to get approval at the next board meeting, but we're moving quite closely to putting something out there where we can showcase the work of diverse creatives in the music theatre sector.
Excellent. And Debo, for the Southbank, how important has it been for the Southbank to really show a very equal opportunity, multicultural, diverse program and involvement across London and across the UK?
With the Southbank Centre, it's one of those things where we occupy multiple positions simultaneously. So, you know, we're on the border of both Lambeth and Southwark, and we really want to be a multi-art centre that represents its local area. But at the same time, because of where we are placed, we're also right in the centre of London, which has, you know, a lot of, whether it's tourist traffic, but a lot of London comes, you know, the gravity of central London in terms of if you're going for a night out or events and things like that. But we are also a national art centre, and an international one. So occupying those spaces at the same time is a balance that we work quite hard to strike, and also understanding that, you know, the access to arts isn't equal in London. So over 40% of our events are free across the year, including in our festivals. And we also try and make sure, so when we say that, we try and make sure that often when the tag of free is given to arts events, it's often, you know, it's often labeled or seen or presumed to be that it will be, you know, amateur arts or, you know, things like that, like where there hasn't been as much time, care, and curation. But we try and make sure that actually the standard of arts that we put on, whether it's in an auditorium where you buy a ticket, or it's in like the Claw Ballroom or any other free spaces, that you're seeing the same level of artists in either one. And we hope that, you know, across the year, but including in Africa Utopia, that we manage to achieve that. I think in this time when we're going digital, it's those same thinking and those same curatorial processes that we're thinking about in terms of who we're platforming, how, the breadth of it, but also for the artists out there who'll know, it's also considering, to be frank, the economics of it. So everything right now is moving digitally and online. However, we're also careful to make sure that if we're asking artists to do things for us, for our digital platforms, that we're paying them. Because there are artists of certain scales where you're so big where actually they're fine, and that they can do work for free, and, you know, it will, but I think the vast majority of working artists, they need to get paid during this time, and being that live events have, you know, been put on pause for now, we need to make sure that we're not adding to a culture of presuming that in this particular moment that we can ask artists to basically work for free just because it's digital. Because the fear of that is that once we are able to go live, even if we continue with digital output, that it creates a culture where actually the expectation is that for digital work, artists don't get paid. And so we'd rather do slightly less and make sure, you know, that it's well curated, it's of great standard, and that it's made fairly in terms of payment of artists than, you know, ask people to do a lot of work for free.
Yeah. And as you're talking about money, you know, this is the big time for, you know, one of the hardest impacted industries through this this COVID-19 crisis is the creative industry. And there's not many people, perhaps I wouldn't, I don't think it would be far-fetched to say that most of the people in the creative industry are freelancers and relying so much on funding, you know, public funding, particularly if their work is community-based. And I know the work that you guys, both the work that you guys do at the Mayor's Office and the British Council is very much community-based also. So that leads us into, in terms of the responsiveness that you know, both the Mayor's Office and the British Council has been able to implement in helping the creative industry, people who are struggling financially right now in getting their projects off the ground or try to be able to maintain somehow. What programs you guys have in place? I know you talk about the Jeanette, you mentioned about the fund, probably 1 second, let me get that. It is the London Response Fund. You talked about the London Response Fund. And I remember before we went completely live, you mentioned about another fund regarding, you know, to help the creative industry during this difficult time. Can you tell us more about those, please?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think it's the same fund actually. The London Community Response Fund has a strand that is focused on artists and creatives, essentially just looking for ways to support organizations to continue to fulfill their mission. But I also want to echo what Debo said about paying artists. So as we're kind of thinking through, for example, our Africa in London program, we are considering, you know, kind of, you need to watch this space because we haven't kind of launched it yet. But we are considering, you know, putting quite a lot of content online, and some of that work will be in collaboration with artists. But our intention, you know, is to pay our artists because it doesn't, you know, it's not fair to have that expectation. It's not about exposure. It's, you know, it's a career, and we need to continue to invest in you know, the creative talent that we have in London. So yeah, I think the main fund that we're focusing on now is the London Community Response Fund. But I think I mentioned before that our culture and creative industries team is really focused on understanding the risks that artists and creatives are facing. So that's a really important element as well, of, you know, just kind of trying to understand where the challenges are and how we build towards recovery and restarting things.
Excellent. And while not all the organizations are able to have the financial resources there to respond, to encourage, you know, creatives to keep going, there are other ways that there are other resources that are out there that organizations such as British Council can, you know, can offer in terms of maybe just in terms of understanding. Genevieve, you mentioned about the different programs that are in place right now that were very exciting, and I said that that AFW will be very happy to share. Can you elaborate more on those those sort of resources, please?
Definitely. I mean, we have a lot of online resources that we've developed, especially for emerging creative entrepreneurs, toolkits with Nesta around, you know, how to grow your business, how to, you know, look for finance, how to apply for finance. I think, you know, our purpose and our unique selling point as an organization is around connections and ensuring those connections, and it's around cultural relations. So, you know, at this time, what we're doing is we're putting all our resource into still supporting and enabling the connections that we make across the world. And I think, you know, with the programs that we're doing, you know, the Fashion Friday, so the Creative DNA program, the Collab Now project that I spoke about, and these are all kind of connection points for people to learn about and engage with new art that's being made or insights that are being shared from the different sectors or industries across the world. And I think just providing a platform for dialogues and discussion to happen, for people to come together and to speak. But yeah, I think I can definitely share those with you, Michael. And
yes,
yeah,
please. We'll definitely be able to help you. Very happy to help in making sure that those you know, reach a broader audience for sure. Debo, I know in addition to the work that the Southbank produces, I know you guys also do other work where you collaborate with you know, other outside entities. I know I've attended an incredible open mic night there, and I can vouch to say that indeed that the quality of the artists who come to these open mic night are very much on the same par as some of the big artists that, if not the big artists that come to the Southbank. So tell us more about how the Southbank, you know, in addition to ensuring that it champions that virtual art, you know, the virtual artists get paid, how you guys also support other businesses and other entities who come into the Southbank for partnerships.
So Southbank Centre, we operate quite a mixed model. We're about a 17-acre site. We've got various businesses on site, but also we have, depending on the festivals and what's going on any given day or weekend. So say with Africa Utopia, we have a marketplace of individual sole traders who come and sell everything from you know, African clothes to furniture, various sorts of trinkets, music, all of the like. And what we do at Southbank Centre, I guess, particularly at this moment, is that our partnerships team is in constant communication with them. right now, I think for us, it's mostly been about talking to people and finding out, letting them know everything that we know, but also, you know, finding out what their position is, and then our senior leadership team is also communicating with the various London arts organisations of a similar size to us. And so they're making sure that they're in concert in terms of the actions that they're taking, and then feeding back the experiences of whether it's the individual artists, the partners that we work with, to DCMS and the Arts Council, so that when we are talking with the government and, you know, with other bodies, that we're feeding back the full experience of not just us as an art centre, but everyone that we work with, whether it's our partners, the artists, you know, sole traders, because we understand that the ecosystem that makes us what we are is far bigger than us, and, you know, the employees that work directly for the arts, for Southbank Centre, and that for us to, when things reopen, for us to be able to get back to business, that we need our partners to also be ready and able as well. Yes, I think in terms of, you know, there is also, you know, the, like, I guess on social media, like the you know, platforming people in terms of the work that they're doing. But the realistically, a lot of what we do is live, and so right now it's just being able to be in constant communication and keep everyone up to date with where we are, and also gather as much knowledge and the experiences of what's going on with all of our stakeholders. Yeah, to make sure that no one is left out or is forgotten as we try and recover from this.
It is so, what you've said just now, Deborah, is so important in terms of just understanding how great, you know, it is to know that that the organizations that all the organizations here right now, including Victorious Art, that you guys do understand what has been great for us, AFWL, for us to be able to connect with you guys, because all of you understand that what we do is bigger than all of us. Do you know what I mean? That when it comes to engaging with communities, particularly in, you know, with the African Caribbean diaspora, and understanding that there is a need for these communities to be very much present, very much represented, that we understand that by not having those sort of outlets, that there are other issues that, you know, problems that can arise within these communities. So it's important to have that. Rachel, I wanted to ask you also in terms of, because not only do you work with, you know, the Brent Council, but you also have other clients, you know, community-based organizations or individuals who might need access to some of these resources offered at the British Council or at the Mayor's office. How do you go about to ensure that they know where to access those resources?
Yeah, I mean, obviously over the years, the different places that I've worked for quite a lot of different local authorities, and each of those, on each of those contracts, I've obviously met up with lots of community groups. So some of them I'm still in contact with, and I do send them obviously information. They have their own groups, and a lot of the work that I did do was to try to facilitate to bring groups together. So obviously forwarding this information, obviously one of the things I have been doing is sort of collecting a list of different response packages across London, and particularly looking at different areas and different networks. So people, I can probably send a few of those links through the chat here.
Yes.
Yeah, but in general, I think it's really, I think one thing we said before is about connecting. You know, looking at different areas of where there are communities, existing artist communities. Obviously, I'm Brent based, I live in Brent, and Brent have an artist network, so it's worth people connecting to that network, and also understanding that there is a response relief funding there, comes under the Brent Borough 2020. It's called Metroland Cultures, and they have a response fund there. I'll send those links through.
And now we come to a point where we need to ask a few, you know, accept a few audience questions. And I just think it's important because I've been very much aware of the questions and trying to make sure that some of the questions that I pose to you guys answer some of theirs also. Someone asked, how concerned are you guys with this sort of collective, universal, this unity that's here now. But how concerned are you guys about that sort of disappearing after the dust have settled with coronavirus?
It's a really interesting question. I think one of the big questions I've been asking myself personally, actually, I work with a coach, and my coach asked me, how do you want to emerge from this? What kind of person do you want to be when you come to the other side of this? Like, are you actually going to learn the lessons that this period of time has taught you? And I think that that's something that we can all reflect on. It's the question is, are we actually going to change as a result of the opportunity that we have to strip things back and to reflect? Are we actually going to recognize, that some of the stuff that we thought were priorities or was a priority isn't? I think it's up to us, to be honest. I think, it's up to us to kind of create a movement for change, a movement for better connectivity. I've seen some really interesting, like just in my personal life, just looking at, my children have cousins in different countries, and all of a sudden they're connecting with their cousins, playing video games together with their cousins in ways that they wouldn't before, because they're all at home, and this is how they connect. Is that this enhanced sense of the need to connect in this particular way. I hope that we will be better connected. I hope we'll recognize not just that the kind of social connection, but the need for mutual support, not just across the UK, but globally. The fact that inequality doesn't just express itself here in London, it expresses itself globally, and we're often quite blind to that. So I hope that will change. It's up to us, though.
Yeah. Jeanette, I'm so happy you mentioned about that. You said it's up to us, because I do believe as a creative myself, and you're all individual creators in your own, in what you guys do, to not just at work, but you have other stuff going on personally. And indeed, that one of the reasons, again, that we call this, I invited all of you guys to be on board, and you guys so very willingly jumped on this opportunity, was to see that people out there, the creators industry, will definitely look to you guys to create that new normal, to create a system, that the systems, because it's not just to be one system, but systems that will facilitate this new normal, where there is greater equality, and where there's still a very obvious unity, not just with the British Council and the Mayor's Office and the Southbank, but across the board, that you guys can affect that change. Do you know what I mean? That collective unit that needs to happen in order to especially get through the next year or two, or but needs to continue. We also have for Genevieve, someone as it's really directly referring to the Nigerian fashion industry, and how while it's directed at AFWL, I think it's worth bringing this question to you also, in terms of enhancing data collection and value addition from the Nigerian fashion industry, where there's there needs to be a recognition, acknowledgement of the Nigerian fashion industry.
Oh, I think what we do, the work that we do as the creative economy team and our creative economy work in Africa, we look at the ecosystem. So we look at supporting ecosystems from individuals to intermediaries, right up to a more systemic level. So looking at working with high-level stakeholders and governments, and hosting policy dialogues. And I think data and evaluation of what's happening is really important to be able to influence. And I think there's a lot of work being done in Nigeria, in West Africa, looking at the creative industries, looking at the impact of the creative industries as a whole, not specifically the fashion industry. But I think it's about kind of doing an audit of what's out there, and bringing that all together. So I think then again, looking at the connection points, because a lot of people have a lot of different information, done a lot of different evaluations, have a lot of data, but the point of bringing that all together into like a cohesive whole to look at that, I think that's really important.
Yes. And it very much what Africa Fashion Week London does, and Africa Fashion Week Nigeria, John is the person who posed the question, is that our platform, which is the largest global platform for emerging designers and creatives who are Africa inspired, is to actually do just that, to bring that visibility, give them that visibility, give them that network opportunity and and marketability. So we're very much understand and recognize that there's an importance to acknowledge the importance of the Nigerian fashion industry. Hence, one of the reasons why we have Africa Fashion Week Nigeria also, which is not just about Nigeria, but represents the fashion industry across Africa. And all the African designers also welcome to participate in Africa Fashion Week London. And in addition to doing our own event, we also collaborate with with the organizations that are here today representing, and we're very proud to be in partnerships with all of you guys too. So thank you so very much. Someone asked for the Southbank, Debo. At the Southbank Centre, if you're a creative business, what creative opportunities do you offer to graduates and students? Your microphone, your mic is muted down.
In terms of creative businesses, that's something I can look into. I'm not sure we have any specific programs for graduates and students in terms of creative businesses. However, we do have a commercial and partnerships team. So depending on what it's like. So from Fridays to Sundays, we have a food market, and those are all individual stall holders. And people in that food market, it is just about reaching out to our partnerships and commercial team to see what slots are available and things like that. But when we have market stalls in our particular festivals and things like that, again, it all goes via our partnerships team. I'm not sure if there's a specific one though for graduates. However, if if you're running any sort of creative business, and you feel that there is a way to be involved with the Southbank Centre, or that there would be sort of value in that partnership, it's always best to just shoot us an email. I can grab the email and put it in the group for who would be best to contact in regards to that. Yeah, I think, to be honest, so at Southbank Centre we do about 3,500 events a year. So there's often the opportunities come up all the time, and so it is always best to just be known and put yourself out there and then see hope for serendipity really.
Mm-hmm. Someone asked, building a brand can be based on 3 key pillars: creativity, marketing, and business. Do we need to put more emphasis on the business side? How is that handled today? We need to create financially sustainable brands. Africa has a very talented pool of designers. So they're trying to figure out, should there be more emphasis on the business side, or, because then obviously you can be, one of the things that we try to do at AFWL is not just to, and one of the programs that we're launching very soon is our production hub, which is giving the creatives the opportunity not just to take their beautiful designs and put it out to the market. We're able to help them in producing that. We'll also be doing a fantastic, an amazing course that we're soon to announce. We can't get into it quite yet, but it's coming, everybody, it's coming. And so for you guys who are the experts in these areas, which pillar is most important to focus on? The creative, the marketing, or the business?
It's such a tricky question. I think they're all important. I think I would say creativity is the most important, because without that you don't have a business. But you need to have a certain level of business know-how, and not everyone has that. If you're an artist or you're a producer, you don't necessarily have, or you don't have an opportunity to study business, or you didn't want to, you don't have that experience. So I think having a basic experience in business planning or financial planning will will definitely stand you in good stead. I think a lot of, especially in the fashion industry, a lot of fashion designers have business partners to do the business side for them. But not everyone is, able to do that. So I think for me, creativity is definitely the most important. And business and marketing are, probably second and third. But you can't earn money. It's difficult to earn money or to make money if you don't have the basics of business and marketing. And so it's kind of like a mix, but yeah, that would be my answer.
For my other incredible creators, Rachel, please tell us, because I know this is an area that you really focus on with your clients also.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, obviously branding is really important, and it's something I think over the years I'm slowly getting my head around. But I think if I was to answer the question in terms of any business, I'd say business is actually the most important thing, because the thing is, without the business, you've got no money, you've got no leads. The thing is, you can always develop your creativity, and I think that's kind of how that's been my approach. I didn't go in with creativity, I went in with business. I saw how I could sell my services and how I could make a business out of it, and then from making a business out of my services, I was then able to carve off pieces of what I had made to do the creativity. So I think it all depends who you're talking to, isn't it? I mean, if you're talking to an investor, or I don't know, a bank, or I don't know, a sponsor, it depends. I would say it depends who you're talking to, but without the business, there is no business. So there's lots of creativity everywhere, but I don't know, but maybe that's just me. I just think if you don't have a business, it's really hard to kind of get moving. But obviously you need creativity. But if you can do something really well, then people will forsake some of the creativity. If you can do it really well, deliver it really well, and deliver your business really well, then you can build on bits as time goes on.
We have a question here, and before we ask this question, I think it's also important, because I have been touching on the fact that you guys are all creatives. So you have your jobs, but you're all creatives also. I know, Genevieve, you have a craft business also.
In the past, not anymore. When I was living in South Africa, so probably about 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I also had a pasta business, because I'm half Italian, so I made homemade pasta and pasta sauces. So yeah, I can't speak from experience of, I definitely get what Rachel was saying. It is tricky. You're either an artist or creative, or you're someone who's quite good at something and needs to make money. So you focus on the business. But sorry, back to your question, Michael.
Yes, and I wanted to also, so with that, I wanted to ask for Jeanette and Debo and Rachel, what are personally for you and your creativity, and how that is, how you express that, and what it is that you're working on right now? Because I know everything has been affected, but what are you working on right now?
Oh wow! So this year, I decided that I was going to work on my voice. And I don't mean as a singer. I mean just understanding what I have to say, what my story is, and how I get that across in the world. So I launched a podcast in January, and that was just a fun project for me to do. But it forces me to reflect, write, and broadcast on a regular basis. And I think that's a really important thing. If you have a creative instinct, you have to practice. And I think I shift from one practice to another. The other thing I launched earlier in the year was a community dance class, which obviously I'm not doing anymore. Kind of thinking about whether or not we go online. But yeah, I think my thing this year has been kind of acknowledging that I have a story to tell and finding some channels through which to tell it. And so now I'm considering whether I'm going to write a book. So we'll see. We'll see. Baby steps.
Good.
Baby steps.
Debo?
Yeah, I'm not about to write a book, to be honest. I stick strictly to reading. Yes, no, I guess for me, one of the projects that I was working on prior to lockdown, but then things changed, obviously, as lockdown came in, is it's an event called First Five with Yomi Shode, the artist, who's a poet and playwright. So really that was around conversations that we've been having, looking at the things that influence all of us, particularly artists, but everyone is influenced via art. And so that was supposed to be looking at him having conversations with other artists who we think have been influential in their various creative communities, and to find out what their artistic influences were. So 2 books, 2 albums, and 1 inspirational individual that they feel shaped them as an artist. We've now moved that to an Instagram live conversation that happens on Wednesdays at 7:30. And so for the lockdown version of it during during this period, it's looking at the first album that they bought, that you bought, and the song on that album that particularly sticks out to you, and why, like what that album means to you. Then they also have discussions around what song is currently getting you through lockdown. If there is a particular song that just makes you feel better or makes things a bit easier that you reach out to, and also what the artist's guilty pleasure is. And so that's a project that we're working on with Yomi Shode and Jack Pado, it's something nice to do. It happens weekly, and it's a creative output that can help, still put into the world and people to enjoy, really.
Wonderful. Rachel?
It was really great to hear what Debo said. I just found that quite inspiring. My first album, mine was Hopelessly Loved by Carol Thompson, basically. But I think being somebody that really loves music, what's been getting me through every few days is watching the Tiny Desk concerts. I don't know if anybody watches those on YouTube. Absolutely brilliant. So what I'm working on at the moment is I'm actually writing a musical. And so it's been this time has been really good for me, because I've just been procrastinating writing this thing for such a long time. So I've managed to get a bit of free script writing software. So that's which has been brilliant. And my musical is really based on the Caribbean, and it's looking at the African and Irish presence in the Caribbean during the 17th century. So I've been working on this for a good few months now, and it's now just really sort of putting this into motion. And yes, I have to say, being given this free software during this time has been really, really useful. But yeah, very exciting, and just really important to make that distinction between the job and your mission work. So this is not a job. My musical is not a job. It's what I do. It's part of my mission. And yes, that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Rachel, I'm so happy you said that, because there is a clear distinction between the job and what it is, your mission work indeed. And that's what I really wanted to have conveyed just now by all of you, by you guys sharing exactly what it is that you're working on. That's really important. Genevieve, I know that you also do some work with King's College, also on the creative economies in Africa. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so that it was a project looking at Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, and creative economy development in those 3 countries, and looking at it through a lens of policy, education, and I can't remember the third thing now. I think it was working with intermediaries, so hubs. So that's come to an end, but there's something else that's that I've been thinking about and doing a lot of research on for a while, is tourism and the creative industries. And I think I've really been thinking in this time what that will look like post-COVID, and the impact of, I think, the impacts that the tourism industry will have. But what is the role that the creative and cultural industries will have in that? So yeah, I think that's something that I've been doing a lot of research on and looking at, I think at the British Council, how can we respond to that as well?
I'm glad I'm glad you mentioned that, because what I believe as, for Africa Fashion Week London, it is a social enterprise, and the work that we do, the work that the British Council does, the work that the Mayor's Office does, the Southbank, the work that Rachel does, in terms of giving visibility to people of the African Caribbean diaspora, is at the end of the day is to celebrate culture. And if you're celebrating culture, you're definitely promoting tourism. And we are very proud to be part of that. And where we can help in that program also, Genevieve, do let us know. And I think it's important for people to understand, indeed, especially when it comes to fashion, that oftentimes people are just thinking about fashion as style and dressing up. But guess what? The people who are, when it comes to looking at work that is inspired by certain cultures, it's there is an element of promotion of that culture that's very, very important. And it was very important for AFWL in what we do. And we want to make sure that in celebrating the culture and bringing the attention to the countries, we're changing narratives, we're changing perceptions, and we're it's encouraging people to want to visit the continent. And we're talking about all parts of Africa, north, south, east, and west. And that's really important. So that's great that you just said that, Genevieve. Absolutely so. We're coming down now to the end of the actual web talk, and I just want to say how hugely, hugely appreciative and incredibly happy we are that you guys were able to join us today. I thank you, all of you, Jeanette, Bain-Burnett, Genevieve Pace, Debo Amon, Rachel, Victor-Sampson, for being here and just sharing so passionately how you feel about the need to encourage creative during this time, and what your respective organizations are able to do to support that. I'm so happy that you guys were able to share also personally what you guys are able to are doing right now to maintain your own creative, outlets and expressions. That's very, very important. And audience, I'm sure, I think you guys heard that not a lot of what they're doing is not necessarily involves actually money making, but what they need is for their soul. Am I right, guys? And so it's very important that that is conveyed, and I think we achieved that today. So I just want to thank you all so very much, audience. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you guys being here. This web talk is recorded and will be posted on all our social media handles also. And my incredible esteemed panelists, I'll definitely share the video with you guys also, and please share on your platforms. We will definitely be in touch. We're partners, so we're definitely going to be in touch, and very much looking forward to what happens after COVID-19, and understanding what you guys just said, and you said it so perfectly, Jeanette, about things have now been there's new purpose, and things have just been postponed. It hasn't ended.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having us, Michael.
Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you so much. Thank you, Genevieve.
See you all soon.
Thank you, Rachel. Debo, your mic is off. You wanted to say something?
Oh, thank you for having us. Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. So have a lovely day, guys. Enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy the weekend. And we'll be in touch if there's, again, anything that you guys want to share. We will be very happy to share on our website. And the conversation continues. It doesn't stop here, everybody. It doesn't stop here. But we'll be doing our share to our part in keeping this collective unit going and helping to minimize and eventually get rid of the inequality that exists in terms of mobilizing across communities. So thank you all so very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day, everybody.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.